This sneaker has the hype, it has the history, and the collab name to back it up. But everyone's focused on the olive suede and the Undefeated logo. There's a detail on this shoe that Jordan Brand didn't highlight, the sneakers app didn't explain, and most people won't even notice until they get it in hand. Let me show you what they haven't told you about the Air Jordan 4 Undefeated 2025. Back in 2005, Jordan Brand dropped a sneaker so rare and so ahead of its time that most people never even saw a pair in person. In fact, only 72 pairs were ever made, and it's actually the first Jordan Brand collab ever. Fast forward 20 years to 2025, and that sneaker is finally back. But here's the thing, while this new retro might look the part, it's not exactly a one-to-one release. So today, I'm not only doing a full on-foot review of the upcoming Undefeated 4s, but I'm also breaking down whether this version lives up to the legacy of the original, or it's just another cash in on nostalgia. I touched on it a second ago, but let's rewind back really quickly to talk about why this pair is so special. While Jordan Brand, in and of itself, is kind of a collaboration between Michael Jordan and Nike, this shoe is actually the first non-Michael Jordan collaboration that Jordan Brand ever did. And Undefeated, the streetwear-focused sneaker boutique, was the lucky recipient of 72 pairs of one of the most coveted sneakers of all time. And because this shoe was so incredibly limited and so sought after, the only way to get a pair back in 2005 was to win a lottery. And the only way to get access to this lottery was to buy a special lottery entry shirt. Because of the incredibly limited nature of the release and also the fact that this shoe looks incredible, we'll talk about the inspiration behind the design of the shoe in a little bit, this shoe became one of the most sought-after sneakers of all time. In fact, so much so that in 2002, the shirt, the original bag that this shoe came in, and a DS pair in a size 10 sold for $44,000 through a Sotheby's auction, which is just mind-blowing money for a pair of sneakers made of suede and leather and glue. When you think of a sneaker grail, there's a few pairs that come to mind immediately. The Paris SB Dunks, the Staple Pigeon Dunks, the Eminem 4s, and the Undefeated 4s. For sneaker collectors, the 2005 Undefeated 4s are the grail among grails. And this year, almost exactly 20 years after the original release of the Undefeated 4s, normal sneakerheads have a chance to grab this shoe for retail. The upcoming 2025 Undefeated 4s release on August 2nd for a retail price of $225. And in sort of an interesting twist, Jordan Brand has decided to release pairs early, not at Undefeated LA, which would make sense because it's the Undefeated Air Jordan 4s, but instead in Chicago, through a QR code that you scan at Millennium Park. Now, to be clear, scanning the QR code does not guarantee you a pair. In fact, it just enters you into a raffle to purchase a pair, and pairs can only be picked up in Chicago. But I wouldn't be surprised if a couple people who maybe spoofed their location and scanned a tweet end up winning a pair and take a flight out to Chicago. For a pair like this, doesn't sound crazy, but it is kind of weird that the first place getting this shoe is Chicago and not LA. But hey, either way, this shoe is gonna be incredibly limited, and the chances of you getting a pair are probably pretty low. Unfortunately, kind of like the original release, where even though we assume it was 72 pairs, there's still rumors that maybe it was 79. No one knows for sure the exact number. No one seems to know the exact number of these pairs releasing. So we can assume that it is gonna be very limited, but we don't know how limited. Now, because I wanted to get you guys this review as early as possible, I did buy this pair for an absurd amount of resale, but that's just because no one has pairs right now. Shout out to Bird Kicks for actually having a pair. I spent, I'll be honest, $1,500 on them, which I know is insane because the price is absolutely gonna be way less than that when they actually release. But again, I wanted to get you guys the earlier review. So please, if you're watching this video and you haven't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button. But obviously you're watching this video after I bought my pair, and even in the last couple days, the resale price has dropped pretty significantly. So if you wanna grab a pair of these early, or maybe you're watching this after they drop and you wanna grab a pair for resale, make sure to check them out through the YouTube shopping tab on your screen. Last time I checked, a size 9 on StockX was like $850. I'm sure it's gonna be less than that when they drop, but for right now, we're talking around $1,000. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think the price is actually gonna sit at when these release. But before we dive any deeper into this upcoming release and talk about some of the differences between the original release and this new release, let's first take a look at the box. Now, I did want to do a comparison between the new box and the original box, but finding an image of the box itself, because there's only 72 pairs, was actually pretty difficult online. I've probably only seen like 3 pairs of the Undefeated 4s in person, and I've never actually seen the box, so I didn't even realize that the original box wasn't even a box. It was like this military style zip up bag, or I guess military style box. I'm not sure exactly what it was from the image, but it's black, it's got a zipper, it's got some text on it. But because this new release is less limited, it actually comes with a box. Now, this box is not inspired at all by the original box. Instead, it's inspired by classic retro boxes. The outside of the box is covered in this sort of satin colored metallic silver. On the top of the box, you've got this logo, which is housed in this gear shape. You've got 05, and 25 at the bottom, of course, for 2005 and 2025. In the center, you've got 20 for the 20 years between those two releases, and of course the Undefeated logo and the Jordan logo. The rest of the box is pretty plain, not too much to report. Of course, you've got the size tag in the front of the box. This is a size 9.5. Unfortunately, that was the only size that I could grab with overnight shipping. He didn't have a size 9. I have other size 9.5 Air Jordan 4s, so I kind of compared it to those, which I do a lot when I get a pair of shoes, which isn't my exact size. We'll talk about sizing later. But the official name of this shoe is Air Jordan 4 Retro OG SP, and the colorway is deep green Clementine black. But the cool details don't end there. Inside the box, you've got this paper that features the Jumpman logo and the Undefeated logo. Inside the box, you've got what seems like a postcard with an image of the La Brea Undefeated store. It says, La Brea since 2002. The only other thing that you actually get inside the box besides the Undefeated Jordan tag, which comes on the shoes themselves, is a set of extra orange laces, which comes in this standard cardboard Jordan box now. That's kind of what they do instead of the plastic bag, which I don't mind. Now, while all of this is great, the original release did come with a couple extra things. It came with a t-shirt, it obviously came with a zip bag, and it also came with a dog tag, which unfortunately they didn't include. But hey, at least you're getting the shoes, so that's cool. So as you may have already known, if you've ever delved into the history of the Undefeated 4s, or may have assumed because of the dog tag that was featured in the original pairs, this shoe is actually inspired by military MA1 flight jackets. More commonly known today as bomber jackets, they come in either a green or a black on the outside and feature a bright orange on the inside. I actually was gonna wear my bomber jacket for this review, but it's crazy hot. It's 94 degrees today. There was no way I was doing that, even in the studio, which has air conditioning, but I don't think it would have added that much to the video, so there you go. If this shoe dropped in the winter, man, some of the fits that people would be throwing up on Instagram would be fire. I will say every fit can be made fire with a pair of Apothecary socks. Check out my sock brand, linked at the top of the description below. Use code Seth, get some money off your first order. We make the best, most comfortable socks and apparel out there, plus pretty much bro cats if you want to grab any of that stuff. Again, link in the description below. But getting into the materials that make up this first retro of the Undefeated 4s, the first thing I noticed when I pulled this shoe out of the box was the smell. And much to my surprise, the first smell that hit my nose when I pulled this shoe out of the box was not glue. It's usually glue. It was actually the suede. For the first time in a really long time, the suede on this sneaker actually smells like a real suede. It smells like a DSW. I know that doesn't sound like that appealing, but compared to most other Jordan sneakers that smell like glue, smelling like a DSW with real suede and leather shoes, it's actually great. I can't get over how good it smells. It's crazy. The dominant color and material used on the upper of this shoe is, of course, this sort of washed olive suede nubuck, which is just beautiful. It does that thing where when you wipe it one way, it gets lighter, you wipe it the other way, it gets darker. Not all suede shoes do that, especially not all suede shoes from Jordan brand. And I will say that genuinely, when you first pull it out of the box, you can tell that it feels different. Is it designer quality? No. Is it shatter backboard quality? Probably not, although that's a different material altogether. It's a leather instead of a suede, although they are both from the same part of the cow. Compared to just about every single other suede Jordan sneaker that I've seen this year and for the last couple years, this seems like it could be the best suede that we've had in a very long time. Now that could be one of the reasons why this shoe retails for $225 and not $215 like a standard pair of 4s, but I will happily pay an extra couple bucks for nicer suede on a pair of Jordans. One of my favorite details on this shoe is the double stitching that can be found on all the edges of the suede panels. Now almost every pair of Air Jordans that features leather or suede comes with double stitching around the paneling on the shoe. However, the color that they chose for the thread used in the stitching seems darker than the rest of the olive used on the shoe. In fact, I thought it was black from images, but it's not black. It is definitely an olive. But it creates this really nice contrast with the rest of the material and really makes the shoe feel more military, more utilitarian. It is so dope. And yes, there's probably some nostalgia here. There's probably some hype in my head because I've always wanted the Undefeated 4s. But genuinely, so far, I'm undisappointed. That was supposed to be an undefeated pun, but it didn't work out. On the bottom half of the tongue, you've got some matching olive netting, which, while yes, it is the same color as a majority of the upper of the shoe, because it's a different material and a different finish, it does provide some contrast. The eyestay of the sneaker, which features most of the eyelets on the shoe, comes in the same suede material. On top of the suede, you've got these black lace eyelet wings, which of course hold the black flat laces in place. Like I showed you guys earlier, there is a set of orange laces, which matches the orange hits on the shoe, but I really like the black touches. I might actually switch them out to orange laces. I didn't think about that. I might do that. But for right now, I'm gonna leave them with the black laces. Let me know in the comment section down below if you prefer the black laces or the orange laces better. Something that I really like that they did on the shoe is that all of the black accents on the shoe don't feel one-dimensional, and that's because they played with different finishes. So for example, on these wings, you've got matte on the top, but on the bottom, at least on the back wings, you've got this sort of semi-gloss finish, which creates a contrast even though it's the same color. Like I said, you'll see that in other parts of the shoe, and I'll make sure to point it out, but it's a really, really nice subtle touch. Moving up on the shoe to the top of the tongue, you've got this satin fabric, which of course comes in olive. And then in the center of the tongue, you've got this military-inspired detail, which has gone on to inspire tons of other details on other Air Jordan 4 colorways, and that of course is the patch. Now on both sides of the pair, the patch comes in black with an orange Jumpman embroidered in the center, and then if you pull off the patch, underneath you've got this olive Velcro, and sort of hidden in the olive Velcro, you've got the words Jordan Rare Air. Now, as much as I love this detail, and as cool as this is that you can kind of like mismatch the patches or do whatever you want with them, I will say that these patch tongue tags, after like the first 2 or 3 times of removing the patches, the corners get like really bent, so they never really lie flat ever again, which is frustrating. I mean, even just the first 2 times of me doing this, now these corners like aren't lying flat, which is fine because I think it does add to the sort of utilitarian look of the shoe, but they're never gonna lie flat again. And if you want them to lie flat, just don't remove that tongue tag. That being said, I still like the detail. Then continuing back in the shoe, you get to one of the most iconic accents on the entire sneaker, and that of course is this bright orange fabric used on the sock liner on the back of the tongue. Even though you only get a hint of it when you're wearing the shoe, it is that really nice pop of color that just accents the olive so nicely, and it ties in so well with that bomber jacket theme. Another iconic detail is the upside down undefeated patch on the back of the tongue. It's a cool hit because on regular pairs of 4s, you've got the upside down Air Jordan tag, which of course was done that way so that people could wear their shoes with the tongues out, which is what they did when these shoes first released. The rest of the sock liner of the shoe comes in this sort of faded olive color. It's more of a gray than the rest of the green found on the shoe. Then rounding off the inside of the shoe, you've got these bright orange foam insoles. On the right side, you've got the Nike logo in black printed on the heel, and on the left side, you've got the Undefeated logo. They're nice thick foam too. They definitely add to the comfort of the shoe. Not a lot, but a little bit. I keep getting wafts of like that really nice suede smell. It's awesome. But at this point, let's answer the age-old question when it comes to a sneaker review. What does this shoe fit like? Well, on foot, the Air Jordan 4 Undefeated 2025 feels like, well, an Air Jordan 4. That means snug around the forefoot, stiff out of the box, but it breaks in really nicely over time. I would recommend going true to size on these guys unless you have wide feet. In that case, I'd recommend going up half a size. Comparing these 9.5s to other 9.5 Air Jordan 4s that I also have size 9s in, I have way too many sneakers, they fit true to size. The look on foot though, absolutely fire, especially with a pair of Apothecary socks. The black, the olive, the orange, these are one of those pairs that go with a bold fit or a more toned down fit. They're just really, really easy to style because they're so understated with some very bright accents. But let's continue back on the shoe to the midfoot where you've got more of this olive colored netting. That's an area that's supposed to be for breathability, but Air Jordan 4s, as I'm sure you know if you've worn Air Jordan 4s before, not very breathable. But then moving around to the back of the shoe, we get to, other than the box, the largest difference between the original pair and this pair, and that is the Nike Air branding on the heel. Now the heel tab comes in matte black with the Nike Air branding in gloss black, similar to what we had in the wings, which creates a really nice subtle contrast, but it's different than the original Undefeated Air Jordan 4s, and that's because the original pair came with a Jumpman on the back instead of the Nike Air branding. Now, while I love the Nike Air branding because that's what you got on the OG Air Jordan 4 releases, and while Jordan Brand tends to only put this on OG pairs, they've put it on a couple collaborations recently, but generally they've reserved it for more OG pairs. This pair though, because the original release, of course, was the first ever collaboration that Jordan Brand did, but also because the first pair came with a Jumpman, it is interesting to see them put that on the heel of the shoe instead of the Jumpman. Now, the reason I think they did this was to preserve some of the grail status of the original release, to make it a little bit different, so while yes, most people could own a pair of Undefeated 4s, it wouldn't be the Undefeated 4s. Now, interestingly enough, Jordan Brand is producing some 2025 pairs with the Jumpman on the back. However, those are purely friends and family pairs, meaning that they will be significantly more limited, probably in the hundreds of pairs versus in the thousands or tens of thousands. So while yes, I do like the way that the Nike Air branding looks, I like the way it fills out the heel tab on the shoe, there is something that doesn't feel right about having it on this shoe. And I know that's crazy to say, but genuinely, knowing almost all of the details of the original Undefeated 4s without actually having pairs in hand, knowing that they had the Jumpman on the back, it does kind of feel a little bit like you almost had it. Now, is it as bad as when they did like the Oregon 5s with that stupid patch on the back and no Oregon logo? No, this is 10 times better than that. This is like as close to the original as I'm ever gonna get, but I do kind of wish they put the Jumpman in the back, but I understand why they didn't do it. Let me know your thoughts on that in the comment section down below, because that really is not only the biggest difference between this shoe and the original, other than the packaging, but also it is kind of a weird way of preserving the hype. Continuing down on the sneaker to the midsole, you get to some more subtle but incredibly clean details. The front half of the shoe comes primarily in black, with the foam coming in a glossy black and the rubber coming in a less glossy black, which again, another one of those examples of subtle contrast. Moving towards the heel of the shoe, you've got this sail color that actually wraps all the way around the back of the sneaker. And then the air bubble, or the visible air unit, like the original, comes in clear but features orange pillars inside, which again ties in with the orange accents throughout the sneaker. Then we get to the bottom of the shoe and the outsole, and a majority of this outsole comes in black rubber, accented by orange on the forefoot and on the Nike branding in the midfoot. 2025, in my opinion, has been the craziest year for Jordan fans, I think, of all time. Now, I realize I was born in '92, so I missed, the first 7 years of Jordan sneakers, but I will say for me, 2025 has not only allowed me to get some of the grails that I thought would be unattainable forever, but the sheer amount of quality releases from Jordan Brand this year has been unmatched. And the 2025 Undefeated 4 is another example of Jordan Brand, in my opinion, doing something right. Now, I understand, for the people who own one of the 72 pairs, yeah, this is gonna tank your resale value. I've seen pairs now on StockX, brand new, going for like $20,000 versus $40,000. In some cases, $10,000 versus $40,000, which, yeah, that sucks. Maybe you should have sold your pair when rumors of this shoe first leaked. I actually have a pair of Tokyo 5s, which are the original pair from 2011. There's rumors that there's a new pair coming out, and I'm sure the resale price of my pair has dropped significantly, but I'm okay with that, because I like the shoe for what it is. And I feel like for the 72 people who own these pairs, that's probably how they feel too, at least the majority of them. And for me, someone who is never gonna be able to own this pair, I love the fact that I can have an actual Undefeated 4 in my collection. I like the fact that it's an actual collaboration and not just some colorway that looks like it could be the Undefeated 4s. Jordan Brand loves to do that. They love to release a crazy collaboration that's stupid limited and then a couple months later release a shoe that looks almost like it. In this case, they're just giving us a straight up grail, which I think is really cool. Now, I understand for a lot of people, that kind of ruins it for them, and I totally get that as well. As being a collector, like, I completely understand that, but it's also one of the cleanest and most wearable pairs of Air Jordan 4s, in my opinion, ever made. So even without the grail status, this shoe is a super, super clean, incredibly wearable, and very high quality pair of Air Jordan 4s. And because of that, I think if you're a Jordan fan, this is a must cop. But hey, with all that being said, let me know in the comment section down below what you think of the brand new upcoming 2025 Undefeated 4s and whether you're trying to get a pair for yourself. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. Check out my podcast, also linked in the description below, and I will see you all in the next one.